This is what I saw at CES 2026. At one of the exoskeleton booths dances, there was a line, and people went lining up for freebies or giveaways. Some came in wheelchairs, some were there for their senior parents or family members who struggle to walk, and of course some were just curious. But they all had one thing in common, a real mobility problem they were trying to solve. They wanted to know, is there something that can actually help? Over the past 3 years, I've tested almost every consumer level exoskeleton I could get my hands on. I went from what is the thing to understanding what actually works, what doesn't, and what still needs improvement. At this point, as some of you have said, I've become one of the more consistent voices covering consumer exoskeletons. So I felt it was time to put everything together into one proper guide. This video is not sponsored by any brand. Everything here is based on my own hands-on experience. I've taken some of the most popular exoskeletons on the market and broken them down using a simple scoring system focused on what actually matters in real life, not just specs on paper. The goal is to make it easier for you to figure out which one better fits your needs. By the end of this video, you will have clear answers to questions like, my knee hurts, which one should I choose? Which one is best for hiking? Someone I know can barely walk. With this extra help, what's the difference between hip assist and knee assist? And ultimately, whether these devices are actually useful in real life, not just impressive tech demos. So if you are curious about where this technology really stands in 2026, this video should give you a pretty complete picture. If you find it useful, feel free to like the video and subscribe. It really helps support the channel and allows me to keep making this kind of deep dive reviews. So what exactly is an exoskeleton? Think of it as an electric bike, but for your legs. In one sentence, it's a wearable robotic system that helps support or enhance human movement. It reads your motion in tandem with built-in sensors, then uses motors and mechanical frames to give you extra power, amplify your strength, and cut down physical fatigue. Right now, most consumer exoskeletons fall into a few categories. Hip assist systems are the most common. This usually places motors around the waist with the straps around thighs to help swing your legs forward while walking, reducing effort and fatigue. Examples include happy shield, dances, ascenties, and wheel robots. Then there are knee assist systems. These place motors beside knees to directly reduce pressure on the joint when walking, climbing stairs, or standing for long periods. This category is much harder to develop, which is why there are still relatively few products on the market. I'll explain more about that later. Brands like Dances, Wire Robot, and Aroma are working this space. There are also ankle-assist devices like the Defy Psyche, which focus more on improving working efficiency and the push of power. And finally, there are combined systems that assist both the hips and knees at the same time. These are still very early stage. I actually tried one at CES, but it's currently limited to beta testers and not ready for public use yet. So I won't go too deep into it here. Once the technology matures a bit more, I'll definitely make a dedicated video on it. Before we talk about which Exos to choose, you need to know why they don't all feel the same. Hip and ankle systems are the easy mode. When you walk, your hips swing and your ankles push off in a pretty predictable rhythm. It's almost like a metronome. So the system just listens, detects the timing, and gives you a well-timed boost, like someone gently pushing you on a swing at the perfect moment. The knee is not that cooperative. First, it's not even a simple hinge. It rolls, slides, and shifts as it bends. And that motion changes slightly from person to person. So already, just attaching a robot in the right place is harder than it sounds. Then comes the real problem. The knee has multiple personalities. When you land your foot, it's a shock absorber. When you are standing, it becomes a pillar holding your entire body. When you lift your leg, it should basically disappear and get out of the way. And when you go downstairs, it turns into a brake that's actively resisting gravity. So a knee exoskeleton is basically trying to be a supportive assistant, a strong bodyguard, and a silent bystander, sometimes all within a single step. And it has to decide which role to play in milliseconds before your next foot hits the ground. That's why knee exoskeletons are still harder to build usually heavier and almost always more expensive than hip or ankle systems. They're not just assisting movement, they're trying to keep up with one of the most complicated joints in your body. So what we just talked about was the algorithm side, the brains of the system. Now comes the part I hope you are still awake for. Yes, this is a bit boring. Next part is going to be even more boring. I'm joking, actually not. Because now we're talking about hardware, basically how you wear it, how it feels, and whether you forget it exists or start thinking about taking it off after 10 minutes. For hip and ankle exos, life is pretty simple. Hip systems, strap it around your waist, strap your thighs, done. Ankle systems, honestly, it's kind of like wearing shoes with extra steps. But the knee is where things get complicated. Devices like EHOMEWEI and EHOMEWEI use multiple straps per leg just to keep the motor aligned with your knee, because once it shifts even slightly, the assistance drops off, or worse, it starts feeling uncomfortable. And the annoying part is, it always shifts a little. These things are very easy to slide down over time. Adding more strap helps, but it doesn't really solve the core issue. It just turns putting it on into a longer and slightly more annoying ritual. Overall, this form factor still needs refinement. One interesting approach is mogul. Instead of strapping a rubber onto your leg, it basically turns it into pants. You wear like normal clothing, clipping the motor, tighten one adjustment, and you're ready to go. Probably one of the easiest knee exos to put on right now. I tested CES 2026, and the motor is seriously powerful. Easily one of the strongest I've seen, but there's still a trade-off. Especially around the thigh area, everything needs to be tightened quite firmly to stop the system from sliding down. Yes, that sliding down problem is still there, because the motor mass is centered around the knee. And that brings us to the biggest issue. It feels heavy. You're constantly aware you're wearing it. The pants are bulky, can feel tight over time, and tend to run warm. Cleaning is also not very convenient right now. So here's the key takeaway. In exoskeletons, weight and comfort matter more than raw power, because the best exo isn't the strongest one, it's the one you actually keep wearing. So are there actually any good knee exos on the market right now? The answer is yes, but honestly, not many. And this matters because knee problems are everywhere. According to available data, around 1 in 4 Americans experience frequent knee pain that affects mobility. And from my own experience testing these products and talking to people at CES, knee assistance is by far the thing most people are looking for. After testing a wide range of knee exos, the one that stands out to me the most right now is the Densys Z1. Interestingly, back in 2023, Densys was also using the more traditional strap a rubber onto your leg design, but after a lot of testing and iteration, they realized it was the ideal solution, which eventually led to the design you see today. Instead of relying on heavy multi-strap systems, the Z1 uses a much lighter brace system structure with fewer contact points, a completely different design philosophy. And the difference is noticeable immediately. Most knee exos feel like a machine trying to move your leg. The Z1 feels more like your knee suddenly with less. It does an aggressive push movement. Instead, it quite unloads stress from the joint in a way that feels surprisingly natural. And the biggest advantage is weight. At around 680 grams per leg, it's noticeably easier to wear for long periods compared to most knee systems I've tested. Even for me, someone without serious knee issues, I could clearly feel the difference. And at CES, I watched senior users try it, and the improvement was immediate. So at this point, the Densys Z1 feels like one of the most balanced knee exos available, especially in terms of weight, comfort, smoothness, and real-world usability. So by now, I already explained the main differences between hip and knee exoskeletons, and more importantly, what you should actually pay attention to when choosing one, especially for knee-assisted systems. To make everything easier to understand, I created a scoring table based on my experience reviewing exoskeletons over the past few years. I broke things down into 7 categories, weighted from most important to least important based on real-world usage. For me, the most important category is power and performance. not just whether the motor is strong, but whether the algorithm can smoothly match movement rhythm naturally and consistently. Next is weight and portability. Because if the product itself becomes heavy and tiring to wear, then it starts becoming an extra burden instead of having move. Then comes ease of use, because if it's annoying to put on every day, people simply won't use it. And also whether you can switch between all the important functions directly on the device itself without constantly putting out an app. With that said, the app experience is honestly one of the least important factors to me, especially for outdoor use or for senior users. Nobody really cares whether the app looks fancy. People care about whether the product is comfortable, reliable, and actually helps. Based on these categories, I scored some of the major consumer exoskeletons currently on the market. You can save this table as a reference if you are considering buying one. For hip accessory Exos, both Hampshire and Dances perform extremely well. Honestly, they're both very solid choices. And at that point, value for money probably matters more than raw performance differences. But for knee assist, the Dances Z1 currently stands at a quality lead as the best overall option I've tested so far. And ultimately, all of this comes down to one simple idea. Don't start with the specs, start with your use case. If you're younger, active, and mainly looking for help with hiking, long walks, or carrying weight, then hip exoskeletons are usually the safer and more mature choice. They're easier to wear, easier to adapt to, and you feel the assistance almost immediately. But if your main issue is your knees, especially for senior users or people with knee pain who can still walk independently, then knee exoskeletons start making much more sense. Because things like walking downstairs, standing for long periods, getting up from a chair, or maintaining stability on uneven terrain are exactly where knee assistance really matters. In many of these situations, hip exos don't have very much. This is where knee exoskeletons genuinely make a difference. So that's my overall guide on which exoskeletons to choose in 2026. And I think the biggest thing we need to clear up is a common misunderstanding. People often focus on motor power, torque numbers, or battery specs, but in reality, those usually are what determine whether you actually keep using the device. What really matters is weight, portability, comfort, and ease of use. If it's too complicated to wear, constantly slipping out of position, or uncomfortable after 20 minutes, it doesn't matter how powerful it is, eventually you'll stop using it. That said, consumer exoskeletons are still early stage technology. Do they help? Yes, absolutely. But will they turn you into a superhero for restored mobility? No. Even systems that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars cannot do that yet. And it's important to remember, these are not medical devices. Everyone's condition is different and the results will vary from person to person. They are designed to reduce strain, improve mobility, and help you move more comfortably, not replace lost physical function. If you're in a situation where even walking short distances is already very difficult, then consumer-level exoskeletons are probably not the right solution. In that case, the safest option is to seek advice from a doctor or rehabilitation professional first. That's the video. I hope it was useful. Thanks for watching. I'm Samuel. See you in the next one. Bye bye.